The Declaration of Independence is a document that needs no introduction. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you probably already know what it says and why it's important. It was the document that officially declared the American colonies as free and independent from the rule of Great Britain. But today we're going to look at the Declaration of Independence in a different way. What if we told you that the Declaration of Independence might not actually be the first Declaration of Independence? There were several acts that happened prior to the writing of this document that also declared independence. So today, we're going to explore what events led up to the writing of the Declaration of Independence and what they mean for understanding the document itself. On June 7, 1776, the Second Continental Congress met at the Pennsylvania State House in Philadelphia to discuss the state of affairs between the colonies and Great Britain. The meeting was called to order by President John Hancock, and there were representatives from 12 of the 13 colonies in attendance, with Georgia being the only exception. The main purpose of the meeting was to decide how to respond to the British military buildup in Massachusetts and the recent battles at Lexington and Concord. The delegates reviewed the events that transpired and drafted a letter to King George II, hoping to reconcile with the king and bring about a peaceful resolution. This letter, however, did not go anywhere. On June 11th, the committee tasked with drafting the letter presented it to the members of the Second Continental Congress, who ultimately rejected it. The delegates found the proposal too conciliatory and instead chose to draft a declaration of the causes and necessity of taking up arms. This declaration was essentially the colony's response to the British crackdown in Massachusetts. On June 17th, the Continental Congress adopted this first Declaration of Independence, and printed copies were distributed throughout the colonies. The document asserted the rights of the colonists and justified their decision to take up arms against the British. It stated that the people had the right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. And it outlined the grievances that the colonists had with the British government. It accused the king of imposing taxes without colonial consent, quartering troops in colonial homes, obstructing colonial trade, and denying the colonists trial by jury, among other things. The declaration concluded by asserting the right of the people to resist oppression and provided a rationale for the revolution. This first Declaration of Independence was largely written by Thomas Jefferson, the same man who would pen the official Declaration of Independence a few weeks later. Once the first Declaration of Independence was adopted, the Continental Congress turned its attention toward the question of independence. Many delegates believed that before formally declaring independence, they should first attempt to mediate a peace agreement with Great Britain. In late June, the Congress appointed a committee to draft a list of grievances to present to the king. This committee, which included John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Robert Livingston, and Roger Sherman, met on July 2nd to write the Olive Branch Petition. The petition reiterated the loyalty of the colonists to the king and asserted that they only wished to resolve their differences. It listed the colonists' grievances, but omitted any mention of taxation without representation, which had been a major source of discontent. The petition proposed reconciliation and asked the king to appoint a committee to meet with the colonists and address their concerns. This petition was then accepted on July 8th, but before it could be sent, word arrived from Britain that King George II had rejected the Olive Branch Petition and had even labeled the colonies as being in rebellion. As soon as this news arrived, John Hancock made a motion that since the petition had been rejected, the Congress should move forward with a formal Declaration of Independence. There was some opposition to this idea, mostly coming from the delegates from New York and Pennsylvania, who believed that more time should be taken to consider the issue. But the majority of the members of the Congress supported the notion of independence. On July 11th, after much debate, the members voted in favor of declaring independence. The exact wording of the motion is as follows: Resolved, that the following: 1, that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the Kingdom of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. The Congress then appointed a committee to draft a formal declaration to accompany the resolution. This committee consisted of 5 members: John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Robert Livingston, and Roger Sherman. But ultimately, the document was largely written by Thomas Jefferson. It took the committee less than 2 weeks to draft the document, and on July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress officially adopted the Declaration of Independence. During the congressional session that adopted the Declaration of Independence, John Hancock, President of the Congress, put the declaration before the body for approval. As the story goes, when he reached the words, "Free and Independent States," he paused, took his hand off the paper, and looked around at the delegates and said, "That is the question before us." After a brief pause, the declaration passed by a vote of 12-0. At the time, Georgia was not represented in the Continental Congress and thus did not vote on the Declaration of Independence, although it's important to note that Georgia did send delegates to sign the document later on. Now that it had been adopted, someone needed to get the declaration into the hands of the printer so that copies could be made and circulated. John Hancock passed the document to Benjamin Harrison, the delegate from Virginia, with instructions to get it to a printer. Harrison then handed it to a young man named John Paul Jones, who delivered it to a printer named John Dunlap. Dunlap made approximately 200 copies of the document, which were then distributed across the colonies. While it was certainly a monumental task to print the documents, it was equally hard to get them into the hands of people who could read them. So the next day, John Hancock wrote a letter to the Virginia delegation in Philadelphia, requesting that they allow Paul Revere to distribute copies of the Declaration in Boston. Revere rode to Boston that very night, and the next morning, July 6, 1776, he hung up copies of the Declaration on the meeting houses and elsewhere around the city for people to read. This is generally regarded as the first public reading of the Declaration of Independence. So to recap, before the writing of the official Declaration of Independence, the Continental Congress produced 3 other documents that advanced the cause of independence. The first was the Declaration of the Causes and Necessity of Taking Up Arms, which explained why the colonies felt compelled to fight against the British. The second was the Olive Branch Petition, which attempted to reconcile with the British Crown but failed to do so. And finally, the third resolution passed by the Congress was the motion to declare independence, which was then followed by the Declaration of Independence written by Thomas Jefferson. All of these documents were essential to the American Revolution. They helped to rally the colonists to the cause of independence, and they helped to frame the war as one for liberty and self-government. They also helped to gain international support for the Revolution. The United States has long been known as a nation founded on the principles of democracy and individual liberty. And these declarations were a major step in the process of establishing those principles. They are a testament to the power of words and ideas, and they continue to inspire people around the world today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe to learn more about the Declaration of Independence and the American Revolution.